Why do you podcast? That's one of the questions I ask all my guests in this podcast series. In over 100 episodes, I've gotten more than 100 different answers, and I'm still curious for more. I'm Annelies, a strategic podcast manager in Belgium, and I confess, a podcast junkie. Please join me in listening to this new episode and discovering yet another podcast why. Along the way, you will also get lots of tips and inspiration to apply to your own podcast or to get you started. Enjoy! Hello, Colin. Welcome to the Why Do You Podcast show. So good to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. It's excellent to be here.
It is. Yeah, it's very exciting for me because you're I always call you my favorite Scot.
Oh, very honored.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about your podcast, and it's about podcasting. I can already say that, but you have more than one show also. So why don't you do the introduction?
Yeah, sure. I suppose our core show is called PodCraft. So PodCraft is all about the art of podcasting. We say the craft of really making a great podcast. And we've done, I think we're on season 21 now. So we've done it since about 2010 or so. So it's been around a wee while. These days it's Matthew and I record it, and we tend to take a seasons-based approach and take one big topic in podcasting and content creation and then dig into that and really kind of explore it as much as we can. And actually this season we're doing a bit more of a variety show. So we're mixing things up a bit, which is always good fun. So that's the main one really, I suppose it's most relevant. But we also do shows on, we've done a space exploration show in the past. I've done one on mountain biking. We've got a UK business startup podcast. And also one I do with Jacob as well, which is the Creator Toolbox. So the Creator Toolbox is all about how to run a business behind the content you create. So the nuts and bolts behind that business that you kind of build around your creator endeavors. So yeah, just a few shows. We quite like to put a bit of content out.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jacob. He works with you at Alitu.
Yeah.
I would not have a podcast and maybe not even be a podcast manager if it wasn't for Alitu, because tools like GarageBand and Audacity, they just blow up my mind. It's too many buttons and too much stuff that you don't need. So I love you for creating Alitu.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I made it for myself, honestly, like back in the day. We first started planning it 2015, 2016, and it was really to solve a lot of my own niggles and problems as well. Like editing is just so time consuming. So much of it is repetitive and boring, and so much of it can be automated, and so much of it doesn't need to be. Like so many of the tools that you use, like you say, Audacity, it has so many things in there that podcasters just don't need. You know, it's for audio engineers. So yeah, it was partly selfish just for me, and I'm glad other people like it as well.
Yeah, well, thank you anyway. I love it. So, and I do hope I can get some more users converted, because it does. It gives you a lot of extra time that you can spend on other things, even if it's only going downstairs to have a cup of coffee while Alitu is creating your episode. But we're here to talk about your podcast, not about that magnificent tool that you created. I was just scrolling through your episode list for PodCraft. And I did notice, I thought, wow, 21 seasons, that's very, very impressive. And you've been at it for a really long time. But then I saw one of the last seasons was only 4 episodes. And I thought, yeah, but then it's easy to get to 21 so fast. But now it explains it. If you work with seasonal topics, then of course, there's more to say about one than the other. So it makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, we do lots of different ones. I mean, it's hard to stick to just one thing, isn't it? Like, whenever you create things, you always want to do so many different things. So yeah, it's hard to.
But what are like, for example, in PodCraft, because you have PodCraft, and then the other one I sometimes listen to is the pocket-sized podcasting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
And
I
that's
hadn't even thought
really,
of
really
that.
short, bite-sized
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah, the idea behind that was really just to have really short, like you say, so like 1 or 2 minute tips that people could do once a day sort of thing. So it was a different format. It was an experiment. We're always trying to do different things, new things in podcasting to try different things out so that, as teachers, we kind of need to be able to try things out so that even if it doesn't work, we can then pass that learning on to, our audience. So yeah, that's what we try to do, is try as many different things as we can. But the pocket-sized podcasting one was actually really fun because it was just so easy to create because it was so short, so simple. We could script it quite well as well, so that we were actually just trying to read things. Actually, it was good practice for actually reading a script and making that still quite engaging. So yeah, it was a great show, that actually, and it still does well now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's easy to listen to it, and you can even make a daily routine out of it. Just one episode every day. Even if you start listening now, because there's lots of episodes, but you can go through them in almost a year, I think, if you really do it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can indeed. Totally.
Yeah, I think.
So I think there's about 100 episodes in each season. We've got a launch season, which is about 100 episodes. So yeah, what would that be? That would be 2-3 months, 3 or 4 months, I suppose. Yeah. And same for growth as well. So I growth tip every day for 3 to 4 months. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I love that format. People seem to resonate with it. Just getting one small thing to do each day, one little task, and that works for them.
Yes, it does. And I think it's also good that you have different lengths in episodes, so people can have a choice. Today I don't have a lot of time. I'll choose a short one, and today I have some more time. I'll listen to a longer one. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So for PodCraft, you have the seasons, but how many episodes is one season depends on the topic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some seasons we've had seasons which are only 6 episodes long, and other seasons which were 20. So yeah, it depends on the topic really, and it's always an interesting. That's always the part I enjoy most, actually, is at the very start, planning out the season and really sketching out, what each episode would be. I love that kind of 1 to 2 hour process of sitting down and thinking through, like, here's a topic I want to teach. Here's a topic I want to share. How am I going to break this down into lessons so that it's really clear, it's really easy to understand? And that's what always ends up in the season plan. So yeah, anything from, I think the shortest I've got is 4 episodes.
Yeah, I just checked.
And we've gone up to 20. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed because normally when I'm listening to a podcast, I don't notice or pay attention to episode number or season numbers. But now I was scrolling through all the episodes just before we started recording, and I thought, oh, okay. But yeah, yep. It makes total sense when you look at it like that. And it's also, well, some people just say what one season is 1 year, or one season is always 20 episodes. But yeah, to look at it like this, I think why should a season be a fixed number of episodes?
Yeah, if you're an education podcast, it really should be built around the topic, shouldn't it? It really should be built around what it is you're teaching, really. But yeah, entertainment shows. I've seen entertainment shows where it's a comedy show and it's a quiz or something, and maybe each season's themed around something different, and each season will be 12 weeks, let's say 12 episodes, and it works quite well that way. It's more like a TV series where a season is always similar kind of length. But yeah, with education, I think it's good to adjust it to the topic.
Yeah. And can you give some examples of topics that you discuss?
Yeah, sure. I mean, on PodCraft, we've had everything from podcast equipment. It's a common one. We always get asked about that. So we've got one season that covers microphones and mixers, then boom stands, then software, all that kind of stuff. We've got one of our longest seasons was around how to build a website, actually, for your podcast. So 20 episodes, which were all lessons around creating that website, which is a home for your show. Then we've got growth seasons. We've got one about monetization, like all the different ways to monetize your podcast. So yeah, basically any of the big questions in our industry, or any big questions that our listeners might have, you can always tend to take those big common questions and break it down into chunks that then, power a season.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. I've learned a lot from the episodes that I've listened to. So,
Oh,
yeah.
great. Good to know. Thank you.
So if you go back to when you started 2010, you mentioned,
Yeah.
why did you start podcasting? Why did you feel the urge to? Where did that come from?
Yeah, good question. It was, so I mean, I was working in a university back in 2008 or so, and my job started out just being a technology enhanced learning assistant. So basically, I was there to help them use tech to teach more effectively. And back in the day, that was quite often recording video lessons or using online classrooms or like writing a blog or something like that. But then my boss actually one day just came to me and said, so there's this new tech that I just found out about. It's called podcasting. And I was like, oh yeah, I've listened to podcasts for a year or so now. And he said, can you look into this as a way to teach our students? So that was like me being forced into actually just starting to look at that as part of my work. And it was great because I just fell in love with the medium, really. I had some funding to buy some microphones, a mixer, a few different things, but software, that kind of stuff. I dove really deep into it. And over the next year or two, I ended up teaching a whole bunch of lecturers how to use podcasting to teach their students. And as a part of that, that's actually where PodCraft, the podcast, came from, because I created a show which was 6 or 7 lessons, which was teaching those lecturers how to create a podcast. And really, I repurposed that. I took that kind of format, a course on how to start a podcast. And then that was the first season. I created a separate one for PodCraft. And that's what started PodCraft as a season, as a podcast. So I just kind of got into it that way. And then I started writing about, the things I was learning. That's what the blog became. So the podcasthost.com is the site that I started writing about everything I was learning. And really that just gained a bit of attention over a few years. And I had transitioned into doing a PhD during about 2012 or so. And during that time, I started to look really seriously about turning that blog into a business at the time. So yeah, by the time I finished my PhD, we'd had a good bit of attention on the site. We'd done tons of podcasting by that point. And I was ready to turn it into a job, really, right then.
All right. Yeah. Cool. I think it's the best job there is. I love being a podcast manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
When people
yeah, we get to have fun for a living, really. It's great.
Yeah. When people ask me what my job is, I say, well, if basically what it comes down to is I'm being paid to listen to podcasts. So, yeah.
Yes, never a bad thing.
Of course, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basics. So I love it.
A simple explanation.
All right. And so I of course, I hope, and I'm guessing that that everything is going pretty well, seeing that you've been doing it for this long, but have there been any bloopers or blunders that you would like to share?
Oh, too many to count. Too many. I mean, yeah, what's that now? So yeah, it's been 9 years. We've been a registered business, about 12 or 13 since I started it as a part-time thing, just on the side, really. So yeah, many, many years of just experimenting, trying things, doing different stuff. I mean, one of the kind of big ones, really, actually, one of the lessons, one of the bloopers, really, was we spent a year building something similar to what you do, actually, podcast management. So really, we were podcast editors. We offered a podcast editing service. And it was fine. We got clients. We worked with people. The blooper really was the fact that Matthew and I discovered that we really don't, it's not really our core skill set. We love teaching people how to do it rather than helping people actually do it. We both got really frustrated. We enjoyed working with clients. We had some great podcasts that we worked with, and it was always great fun working with podcasters, but it always felt so much more satisfying to both of us, I think, to write something or to create a course or to create a video or a podcast episode that reached thousands of people as opposed to just helping one person at a time. So we totally rolled back on that. That was a whole business direction. We built a service around this, took on clients, built this whole service, and we essentially stopped it altogether. We killed that service altogether at the end of a year or so, just having made that realization. So yeah, that was one wrong direction that we took, certainly.
Yeah. Well, I love that you call it a lesson instead of a blunder or a blooper, because that's actually what it is. You're supposed to learn from them. That's why they happen also, I think. So
Indeed. Yes, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, it's that is what you were describing, that you figured out that you didn't really love doing is exactly what I love doing. I mean, I do workshops also where I teach people, but I think my first love is the editing, because and writing show notes and getting and creating a really good title for an episode for my own podcast and for my clients. That's it's a challenge every time.
Yeah, I know, it's so good, isn't it? I just love the fact that there's so many different elements to what we do in podcasting as a whole. And that there's always people that love every element of it. Like there's some people that absolutely hate editing. Like
yeah, but they haven't tried Ali2 yet.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But there's others that love it, and it's just there's so many different little parts and different types of people that love different things about it that you can always find, somebody that loves this part of it that can help you out with it, and you do this other part that's your real strength. And yeah, that's a big part of what I love about the whole industry, actually.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, to me, it's not even, the editing is not about all the technical stuff and about the audio engineering. It's about making my client and myself for my own show and my guests sound good.
Yeah. And that's what it should be, shouldn't it? That's what it should be. But there's the trouble is that a lot of people get kind of caught up in the techie side of it, and the software and the settings and the compression and the EQ and all these kind of things. And you're absolutely right. It's not about that. It's about the content. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And just cutting out the ums in the right place, and not all of them, because we're not robots, and and making the silences that are too long shorter, but just the right length of silence. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. That's that really nicely reflects actually the idea. We called our show PodCraft because that's what I believe it is. It's a craft. You craft this thing. It's an art, crafting this end result, which really draws people in and causes a reaction in them and causes an impact in them and emotions and all that kind of stuff. There's so much you can do with the voice that you can craft around a voice. That's the beautiful thing about it.
Yeah, it is. We've been talking about the beauty of things and it being a craft, but my next question is a good one to follow up on that and maybe go into it a bit more. What is the most important ingredient for a good podcast to you?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's a whole there's so many different elements go to it, isn't there? But one of the biggest really actually is just a bit of thought beforehand around a plan, really to have a plan around what you do, and to really kind of have some consideration around the storyline that goes through the whole thing. I think this is the problem, like a lot of interview shows, and you're obviously not one of these, Anne, because you've got a really good direction in front of you. I can see you checking your script and your questions and stuff, but so many people go into interview shows and think that they're easy. They're easy because somebody else just turns up and they give the value, and all you have to do is have a conversation. But there's so many different parts to it around being able to draw out great stories and ask good questions and draw out things that really mean something to their audience. So that's a big part of it. It's around that, taking this time to actually look into the person that you're interviewing, to sculpt some questions specific to them. And then the second part of that, really, by far the more important part actually is the listener. It's making sure that plan, those questions, that story resonates with what the listener wants. And so there's a whole thing before that, like when you're actually planning out the podcast as a whole, where you sculpt out what your ideal listener is, and you think about, who is the person that wants to listen to this show? Who am I creating this show for? What problems do they have? What pains do they have? What things can I help them with? And how is my solution going to be unique to me? What angle can I bring to this? Because there's always those elements to it, like something that you can make it slightly more unique because of the experience you have. A big thing that I always talk about around this is my teaching experience. That's what led to seasons approach that we take in PodCraft, because I think in lessons, I think in courses, I think in curriculums. And that's kind of what really led to the way that we do our podcasting. So every person out there has something in their experience which lends itself to that, to something unique around it. So there's two parts to that plan, isn't there? There's thinking through the audience, the listeners, the problems, the pains, and your solution towards that. And then there's thinking in the episode itself. How is this person? What's a story that this person has that's going to really resonate with this audience? Solve one of those pains, take one little thing and help them with that. So I think it's the part that a lot of people miss, because it's the more ephemeral, it's the more difficult, because it's actually kind of hard to build, to sculpt that message, to craft that message, like we've been saying. But it's the part that's really worthwhile spending the time on, much more than anything else.
Yeah. I love your answer, because it's something that in what I do, I put a lot of weight on the strategy, the plan, the know why you're doing this and for who you are doing this. But yeah, some people, I feel like they think strategy is a dirty word or something.
Yes. Yeah. I suppose it comes with, like, I don't know, business connotations or something, like it's your strategy for taking over the world or something like that, isn't it? But it's not that at all. It's basically how you plan to achieve whatever your goal is. And your goal probably is quite altruistic. It's probably to help your listeners, in which case maybe you can grow a business around that. So yeah, not a dirty word at all.
No, I don't think so. So yeah, I loved your answer. Having a plan, actually, because in 100, what number is this? 134 episodes, I've heard.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. I've heard a lot about being authentic and which is, of course, also very, very, very important. But I think this is the first time someone says having a plan. Yeah. You see, after 134 episodes, still with the same questions, indeed, like you noticed in front of me on a piece of paper, that well, I know them by heart, but they're always the same since the beginning, since episode 1. But they're like.
But that can be a really nice approach, because it means that you do get such a nice comparison episode to episode. So you get different perspectives on the same questions, and
it is. Yeah, and also now this paper is here as kind of my security blanket, I always call it, because of course I know what's on the paper.
Yes.
And it's also all about listening to your answers, so I can ask some extra questions that are not on my paper, depending on what you're telling me. But yeah, a plan. Yeah.
Good. Well done.
Good. I hope the listeners take this also with them, because that's what you need. And a lot of times when someone asks me, what do I need to start a podcast, or what should I do, and I also say very often, just do it. Because there's also a part you cannot. So you have to have a plan, which is important, but there comes a point when you just have to get started also.
Yeah, for sure. And podcasting in particular it's a creative endeavor. You know, you're making something. You can have a nice strategy to start with, a good plan. But often you can only really figure out really what your message is, what your audience is. You can have a good idea to start with, but often you'll end up refining what your message is, what your audience is, what your strategy is over time after you start doing it, and getting feedback as well. Like, you need to actually talk to those listeners, provide them with something, provide them with a first season, 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes, something like that. And then get in touch and say, like, tell us what you think. What do you want more of? What do you want next? And really that's what turns into a great plan over 20 or 30 or 40 episodes. Because they've told you what they actually want.
Yeah. Listening is actually, podcasting is not all about talking. Listening is to your guest, but also to your listeners.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so much you can get from your listeners, for sure. Yeah. There's so many ways as well. Like, I mean, what do you do these days, Anne, to get feedback from your listeners? Do you have surveys? Do you do questions on social? Do you have any methods for that?
Well, I don't have a lot of listeners. Like, I mean, most episodes with Dutch speaking guests are around 20, 30.
Mhm.
I do have the episodes that I've done in English, of course, have a much wider audience
Sure.
because of the language. But yeah, a lot of them I actually know personally. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, well, that
yeah,
makes it easy to get
yeah,
feedback.
yeah. Because I go to also I'm a networker. I go to a lot of networking events, offline, online. So I talk to a lot of people, and then a lot of them come up to me and say, "Oh, I listen to your podcast," and then I can just ask them. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I get most of my feedback, actually. But
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
creating a survey to put the link in my show notes and then asking in the episodes, let me know who you would like to hear as a next guest or what you think, or that is on my to-do list. But
Perfect.
yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. If you have any tips for different things that we can do.
No, I mean, like a survey is always quite nice. I think we talk often about the idea that you should keep it down to very simple calls to action whenever you're podcasting. Like one of the big powers of podcasting is the fact that you can grow really big trust. Like you can actually encourage nearly all of your listeners to do something if you put enough effort into it and it's something aligned with, with your show. So if you put together a survey, often you can get most of your listeners to actually fill in that survey if you mention it over a few episodes and you make sure you're being nice and focused, because the power again is that kind of engagement. But the weakness is that people are often out doing things or on the go or walking the dog or something like that, while they're listening. So you do have to mention it 2 or 3 times over a few episodes. So if you had that survey and then you make that the one call to action at the end of each episode, focusing just on that, you'll probably be able to get some really good feedback from that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Good tip. Yeah. Yeah. And it's all in the repetition. You're right, because you're not always listening at a time or a place where you can immediately click the link and answer some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so often people just ask too many things as well on a podcast. Like, how many podcasts have you listened to and they end up with somebody saying, "Oh, so thanks for listening to the show. Now go over and follow us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn, and then go and fill in our email newsletter link over here, and then go and have a look at the website over here for the show notes, and then give me a review and a rating over on iTunes and Apple Podcasts and all these different places. Oh, and by the way, also, I've got a product over here. Go and buy this product too." And it's just one thing at a time, really, you have to concentrate on.
But it's difficult. It's sometimes difficult to choose one.
Yes, true.
But I did get a tip from someone else who said, yes, there is the rule of one call to action, one subject in one email, also, for example. Maybe we can add to that one topic in one podcast episode. Yeah. But she said for call to actions, maybe it is good to have 2, so you have 2 options for your listeners. And then because if you only give one option and they don't like it or they don't want to do it, then they don't do anything. But if you give them 2 options, then they have a choice and they can do either one or both.
Yeah.
But
yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. As long as they're not conflicting as well, in terms of, if it's somewhere simple to go to and you've got a nice if you've got a nice kind of easy way for them to actually action this thing, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, I think the trouble is when you end up asking people quite non-specific things, and this happens a lot in podcasting as well, where somebody at the end will say, just give us some feedback. Go to x.com and give us some feedback. What do you think of the show? And it's just so unspecific that it's actually quite hard to go in action. So you could give a couple of calls to action at the end of a show if you're quite specific about them. It's like, okay, so I'd love to hear your feedback. Today we talked about microphones, like what are the best microphones for podcasting? So please tell me over on x.com, what's your favorite microphone? Something so focused. And then you can say something else as well related to that if you want to. Yeah, different call to action maybe for anyone who doesn't care about microphones. They've got a different thing to go in action.
All right. All right. We're almost at the end. I've only but maybe this will be a difficult one,
Okay.
or not. If people want to start listening to your podcast,
Yeah.
where should they start? What would you say is the first episode they have to listen to?
Good question. Yeah. So with PodCraft particularly, because it's seasons based, you can just look through the seasons and find one that's really most relevant to you just now. So if you're out there and you do run a podcast already, then it might be that you want to jump into the monetization or the growth seasons. They're probably good starts for anyone who already podcasts. But if you're not, if you are looking to starting a podcast, then we've got our launch season. So we've got one season which is all about how to start your podcast. So that'd be a good place to start in. But yeah, I'd love, if you don't mind, Dan, I'd love to encourage anyone to live to the Creator Toolbox as well. I'm really enjoying running the Creator Toolbox just now too, which is more just an excuse to talk about the wider creator economy, and how people run a whole business behind their content creation efforts. So it's definitely a more, not necessarily if you're really new to content creation, but if you're looking to take it further and grow a business around the content you create, that's a good one to check out, because it's been great fun doing that one. So yeah.
And it's called Creator Toolbox. So, but I've listened to a couple of episodes of that one as well. So, and I noticed it's not only the tools, the online tools and systems software that you use, but it's also like more mindset tools sometimes.
Yeah. I count like frameworks, mindsets, productivity hacks, anything that's really behind something in your toolbox. It doesn't have to be a microphone or a bit of software or something. Anything that's in your toolbox to help you run a more successful content creator business. That's what it's for. Yeah.
Okay. So that's definitely one I also recommend. Yeah.
Thank you.
I must maybe give a warning to the Flemish or Dutch listeners. If you can listen to the episode with two Scottish guys talking about tools, because sometimes it is a bit. I usually listen on the higher speed, like 1.4, 1.5, but for you guys, I have to go to the normal speed.
So slow it down.
Yeah, slow it down.
I found that actually. I listen to podcasts on 1.2 or 1.4 normally when it's generally when it's an American audience or an American podcast. But as soon as I switch back to a UK podcast, I always have to turn it down. I think we just talk faster in general. So yeah, I'm not sure how that translates to the Dutch audience. I don't know, but it sounds like we're too fast for that as well.
Yeah. You talk faster than American English in general. Yeah.
Really?
But I think it's also because there's like the same as in the Flemish language, there are so many dialects and no one actually speaks the general English or Dutch that we learn in school. So when you're from a totally different region, it's sometimes difficult to understand a person. But but that adds to the authenticity also. So
that's true. Yeah. You don't want to be sanitizing it too much.
No, you don't want to talk like the Queen. Yeah. No. Or you have a king now. So no.
Yeah.
No, we don't want that. No, that would be boring, actually. So
yes.
Yeah.
We'll stick with our accents, even if it makes a few of the words a bit obscure. We'll see.
No, but it does help that you can adjust the speed in most podcast apps. So
yeah. And it's very occasionally I'll slow it down as well. Like 0.9 or 0.8 or something actually can. When you do that to some shows, it just makes them sound a little bit drunk. But for other shows, it slows them down to a normal speaking rate, which is great.
All right. All right. My last question is also one that I ask everyone because I've made it to 134, but I would like to make a lot more of these episodes. So do you have any suggestions for another guest that I could invite?
Oh, another guest. Well, you've already mentioned a few of the, we talked before about Jeremy. You've already had Jeremy on, good friend of the show. I love, there's a couple of guys who I know well through the podcast industry. One's called Craig Hewitt from Castos, and another is Brian Castle from Ripple.fm and a few other products. And both of them have been in the podcast industry for a long, long time and have some great insights on how it all runs, how it all works, and how to run a great show, actually, as well. So they're both great people to talk to.
Okay, cool. Noted. All right. Thank you very, very, very much, Colin, to be here.
No, you're most welcome. It's great to come on. It's it's always great to talk about podcasting in general. Talk to another podcaster. So yeah, thank you for the invite.
No, thank you for making time for this and for the tips you gave us also. I can already announce we have planned another recording for early next year for my other show, which will
of course.
Which will be all about Ali2 and the most amazing podcasting tool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
I'm just
I already want to say to the listener, also tune into that one. It will be the end of January, I think, if I remember correctly. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks again. Cheers.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I'm happy that you chose to spend your time listening to me and my guest. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you don't want to miss any episodes, just click follow. You will recognize the English spoken episodes by the little country flag in the episode title, which tells you where my guest is from. If you would like to do my guest and me a huge favor, then please give both of our podcasts a 5-star review. And we also love to hear from you, so don't hesitate to send us a message. You can find all our contact details in the episode description. Till next time!